Week 11 of the fantasy baseball season, and here's a few hitters I looked at this week. The first guy, Nolan Jones of the Colorado Rockies. Jones on the season, since he's come up, 3 home runs, 11 RBIs, 4 stolen bases, 6 runs scored, 348 average, and a 400 on base. Jones, one of the former top prospects in the Guardian system, but they gave up on him and traded him away to the Rockies, and right now he's paying big dividends for this Rocky team. In the minor leagues this season, he was hitting over 340 with 12 home runs, and he's doing a little bit of everything. So right now, Jones is out there in 54% of fantasy leagues, and this is probably the last chance fantasy owners will have to get him. He's bringing stolen bases, he's bringing power, and he's bringing a good average, and he qualifies at first and outfield. June 7th versus the Giants, 2 for 4 homer. June 8th versus the Giants, 3 for 3 with 2 RBIs, a stolen base. June 9th versus the Padres, 0 for 2, a run, a stolen base. June 10th versus the Padres, 1 for 3, a homer. And June 11th versus the Padres in that one, 1 for 4 with a run. So right now playing great baseball. I think one of the top hitting ads this week here on the wire. And like I said, first in outfield he qualifies on. Chris Bryant still out with injury, so he's going to play there. CJ Cron out as well. And now Charlie Blackmon even went on the injured list. So with all these injuries, and even if those guys come back with the DH obviously in the National League now over the last few seasons, I think they're going to find a way to have Jones in the lineup every day as this Rocky team. And right now, he's a big pickup this week. The next hit is Francisco Alvarez of the New York Mets. So Alvarez so far in his rookie year with this New York Met team, he's been looking good, and he's getting an everyday opportunity, especially now with Pete Alonso out. They're either DHing him or catching him. Every day is Alvarez with the big hole Alonso left after hitting 22 home runs so far this season. So on the year for Alvarez, 12 home runs, 25 RBIs, a 19 runs scored, a 250 average, and a 301 on base. I know over the last couple weeks the batting averages went down big time, but the power is still there. And we know catch is one of the weakest positions, if not the weakest, in fantasy baseball. So if you have a guy like Alvarez on your team who's going to finish the year with most likely 25, 30 home runs, if he continues at this pace, and available right now 51% of fantasy leagues. He's a big ad this week, and he was the number 1 prospect in Major League Baseball mid-last season. Few games here for Alvarez. June 7th at the Braves, 1 for 4, a homer. June 8th at the Braves, 2 for 5, 2 homers, 3 RBIs. June 9th at the Pirates, 1 for 5, a run and a rib. June 10th at the Pirates, 1 for 4. And June 11th at the Pirates, 0 for 4. So Alvarez, he's a streaky hitter, no doubt about it, in his rookie year. But he's definitely got legit power, and he can hit it to all fields out of the ballpark. So right now, while he's available in 51% of fantasy leagues, and he's been on a tear with the power once again here with 4 home runs in the last 6 games. He's definitely a catcher and hitter I looked at this week. The next guy's another catcher, Gary Sanchez of the San Diego Padres. So Gary Sanchez coming into the year, started the year with the Giants, didn't make the big club, so he opted out. Went to the New York Mets, played a few games there. And then the Padres, they had to need a catcher, and they picked him up off waivers. So far, he's off to a great start here with the Padres as Sanchez. 5 home runs, 13 RBIs. 8 runs scored, a 267 average, and a 306 on base. As Sanchez, we always know he's had power. Even last season, 420 at-bats, he had 16 home runs with the Minnesota Twins. And I think he fits this Padre team well with a lot of good hitters in the lineup. He's going to get good pitches to hit. When you got a Bogarts over there, Juan Soto, Fernando Tatis, a Jake Cronenworth, and a Manny Machado, teams, they're not going to worry about Sanchez. And he's going to get good pitches to hit, and that's exactly been the case for him since he went to the Padres a couple weeks ago. June 5th versus the Cubs, 1 for 3, a homer, 2 RBIs. June 6th versus the Mariners, 1 for 3. June 7th versus the Mariners, 2 for 5, a homer, 3 RBIs, 2 runs scored. June 9th at the Rockies, 1 for 5, a homer, 2 ribs. June 10th at the Rockies, 1 for 5, an RBI. And June 11th, the Rockies 0 for 4. So right now playing good baseball, showing good pop. And we know catch is a weak position. So Sanchez out there, 71% of fantasy leagues. And he's definitely a solid ad this week on the waiver wire. The next hit is Orlando Arcia of the Atlanta Braves. So Arcia right now, he's been starting to hit it well over the last few weeks. And he's out there in 52% of leagues. And he qualifies at second, short, and outfields. And Dandy Swanson, obviously a big-time free agent going into the offseason. The Braves, they didn't have trouble letting him walk, and they got Arcia and Vaughn Grissom, who's in the minors, who last season and a cup of coffee with the Braves looked pretty decent. So on the season, 5 homers, 19 RBIs, 22 runs scored, a 318 average, and a 372 on base here for Arcia. But the last couple weeks here, a homer, 6 RBIs, 5 runs scored, 333 average, and a 375 on base. So right now, great versatility. Like I said, second short in outfield. And he's getting pitches to hit in a stacked Brave lineup where they're not going to really pitch around Arcia, and he's going to get a lot of fastballs to hit and stuff like that. So the last few games for Arcia, June 7th versus the Mets, 2 for 4, running a rib. June 8th versus the Mets, 3 for 5, a homer, 2 RBIs. June 9th versus the Nats, 1 for 4, 2 RBIs. June 10th versus the Nats, 0 for 3. And June 11th versus the Nats, 2 for 3. So right now, last week alone, he had 4 games with multiple hit games as Arcia. So he's a nice pickup. Can help you in many positions, like I said, especially short and second base. Pretty weak positions in fantasy baseball, and he's definitely a hitter to go out there and get this week. The next guy's Ke'Bryan Hayes of the Pittsburgh Pirates. So Hayes, I mentioned him as a pickup this last week, and now he had another nice week. Hayes hitting 500 on the week here. On the season, 4 home runs, 28 RBIs, 7 stolen bases, 33 runs scored, a 262 average, and a 304 on base. But the last 2 weeks, he's been on fire. 2 home runs, 11 RBIs, a stolen base, 7 runs scored, a 404 average, and a 404 on base. So Hayes, I know he's not walking a lot, but he's stealing bases, he's scoring runs for this Pirate team. And that's the categories he's going to help fantasy owners in, I believe, here, Hayes. We know he's not a power hitter or an RBI guy, but batting average, scoring runs, and stolen bases, he could help. June 6th versus Oakland, 1 for 4. June 7th versus Oakland, 3 for 5, a run. June 9th, a career game versus the New York Mets, 5 for 5, 4 RBIs, a stolen base, 3 runs scored. June 10th versus the Mets, 0 for 4. And June 11th versus the Mets, 1 for 4 in that game. So right now, good matchup coming up this week to start at Wrigley Field, where obviously it's a good hitter's ballpark. And Hayes, he's playing comfortable right now. And this is the last chance, like I said, for owners to go out there and get him. Only available right now in 44% of fantasy leagues. If you need a third baseman or just a utility guy in deeper leagues, I think Hayes could be a good pickup this week. Off the wire, the next hit is Joey Wiemer of the Milwaukee Brewers. So Joey Wiemer, one of the top prospects in the system, and he's pretty much played the whole season for this Milwaukee Brewer team, and he's one of the hotter pickups this week off the wire. Added in 24% of fantasy leagues on the season, 8 home runs, 23 RBIs, 10 stolen bases, 26 runs scored, 224 average, and a 296 on base. So yes, the batting average is low. Strikeout rate pretty high on the year for Wiemer with 62 Ks in 196 at-bats, but power is going to be there, I believe. And stolen bases, he definitely could finish the season as a 2020 guy, I believe, is Wiemer. In the last few weeks, he's starting to get it going. 3 home runs, 9 RBIs, 4 stolen bases, 9 runs scored, a 341 average, and a 431 on base. So he's playing every day for this Brewer team. But they're mixing and matching him around the lineup a lot. Some nights he's batting 9th, some nights 5th or 7th, and then even 2nd he batted in yesterday's ball game. June 7th versus Baltimore, a career game, 4 for 4, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs. June 8th versus Baltimore, 1 for 4. June 9th versus Oakland, 0 for 3 with a run. June 10th versus Oakland, 0 for 3. And June 11th, 0 for 4. So I know the last 3 games he's cooled off a little bit. But it's embarrassing for this Brewer team that the Oakland Athletics went in there going into the series with only 13 wins and sweeping them. So whatever the case may be with that, it's not a good thing. But I think Wiemer, like I said, could be a 2020 guy this season. And he's definitely on pace with it, especially at stolen bases with 10. So if you need stolen bases and some surprising pop, I think Wiemer could bring that for owners. And right now, he's available in 74% of fantasy leagues. The next hitter is Marcell Ozuna of the Atlanta Braves. So Ozuna, it's been an up and down type of season for him. Some weeks he's hot, and some weeks he's not doing anything. But we know Ozuna's main thing is showing power. And on the season, he's got good power numbers. 13 home runs, 29 RBIs, 25 runs scored, a 236 average, and a 314 on base. So Ozuna, over the last few seasons, we know he's not a batting average guy, even though we know in the 2020 shortened season, he led the league in batting average. But the last few weeks here, Ozuna's playing good baseball. 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 5 runs scored, a 250 average, which is real good for him, and a 302 on base. But even to expand the numbers further, in the last month, it's been a real good month for Ozuna. 7 home runs, 19 RBIs, 13 runs scored, a 318 average, and a 368 on base. So like all power hitters, it's going to be peaks and valleys. But right now, Ozuna, the last month's been definitely solid for fantasy owners to add. And it's very surprising to me he's out there in 67% of fantasy leagues. June 7th versus the Mets, 2 for 4. June 8th versus the Mets, 1 for 5, a homer and RBI. June 9th versus the Nats, 1 for 3 and RBI. June 10th versus the Nats, 1 for 4, a homer, 2 RBIs. And June 11th versus the Nats, 2 for 4. So right now, playing good baseball is Ozuna. Braves got a good matchup coming up this week to start at Detroit, where they give up a lot of home runs and their pitching staff just isn't that good. So it wouldn't be surprising to me if Ozuna could hit 2 or 3 home runs this week here for this Atlanta Brave team. And like I said, he's going to bring pure power to fantasy owners, and he's out there in 67% of fantasy leagues. The next is LaMonte Wade Jr. of the San Francisco Giants. So Wade's been on and off this list this season here, and he's been pretty solid for this Giant team. Right now out there in 55% of fantasy leagues on the season, 8 home runs, 20 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, 32 runs scored, 273 average, and a 413 on base. So a great on base guy is LaMonte Wade Jr. He's going to show some power here and there with his specialty scoring runs, and he's coming off a game a few days ago where he was on base 6 times for this Giant team. So Wade, he's been solid the whole season, and he's versatile as well, qualifying at first and outfield, and he's the table setter for this Giant team. June 6th at the Rockies, 3 for 3, 3 runs scored, 2 RBIs, and walked 3 times as well. June 7th at the Rockies, 2 for 5. June 8th at the Rockies, 0 for 4 with a rib. June 9th versus the Cubs, 0 for 2 with a run. And June 10th versus the Cubs, 0 for 4, and got a rest day June 11th versus the Cubs. So right now, going into St. Louis, the next matchup here for the San Francisco Giant team. And this Cardinal pitching staff, one of the worst in the league with a very high ERA. And I think Wade and this Giant offense could take advantage of this pitching staff over there. We know this Giant offense isn't all that great, but Wade's scoring runs. He's showing some decent pop in the leadoff spot. And I think he's a decent ad this week out there, like I said, in 55% of leagues. The next hit is a minor league hitter, but I believe he's going to come up any day now. Is Christian Encarnacion Strand. I mentioned him a few weeks ago. Strand is a pickup, and he's tearing it up right now in AAA. So this red team, what a nucleus and what a minor league system they've had. We've seen Matt McClain come up. We've seen Ellie De La Cruz come up, and he's tearing it up already. And I mentioned him last week as a last-second ad. And now also Andrew Abbott's come up over the last couple starts, and he's looked good. So right now, Encarnacion Strand out there still in 82% of fantasy leagues. And if you need power, a guy who's going to get an everyday opportunity once he comes up for the Cincinnati Red team, he's going to be the guy, obviously, is Encarnacion Strand. 16 home runs in the minor leagues, in over 330, and his times right now is Encarnacion Strand. Right now, I don't know why the Reds are waiting on this guy. They got Kevin Newman at first base, not really an everyday player. He's more of a utility and a guy to pinch run and stuff, but Encarnacion Strand's the real deal. And to put him in that ballpark, obviously, where the ball carries and it's a small field, a bandbox in Cincinnati, to go with a De La Cruz, to go with a Spencer Steer, that's going to be a dangerous lineup. So if he's out there in your fantasy league as a good stash is Encarnacion Strand, because I believe he's going to be up any week or even any day now, and he could be a big-time pickup fantasy owners this week. And the final hitter I looked at off the wire this week here is Royce Lewis of the Minnesota Twins. I know Royce Lewis had an injury scare a few days ago, but he's back in the lineup, and he's looking good as Royce Lewis. We know he tore it up in the minor league rehab, and he got dropped in a decent amount of fantasy leagues after that scare. But right now, out there in 54% of leagues is Lewis, so he's going to get an everyday opportunity for this Minnesota Twin team, and he's just a guy that gets on base and hits the baseball. So on the season for Lewis, in a small sample size, I know only 41 at-bats on the year, 2 home runs, 9 RBIs already, 4 runs scored, a 300 batting average, and a 300 on-base percentage. So like I said, Lewis has some pop, qualifies at third and shortstop, good versatility. And this Twin team, we know they have trouble finding offense, so Royce Lewis definitely could bring that to them. And after coming back, after I thought he sprained his neck or broke it, pretty impressive in my opinion that he's back. In those last 2 games back, he's got 7 hits now in his last 8 at-bats is Royce Lewis. So he's white hot. People jumped the gun and dropped him quickly after tripping over first base and falling on his neck. But right now, he's looked good. June 7th at Tampa, 1 for 4, an RBI in that one. June 8th at Tampa, 0 for 4. June 9th at the Blue Jays, 4 for 4 with a run. And June 11th at the Blue Jays, 3 for 4 with 2 RBIs. So right now, batting 6th or 7th in the lineup. He's going to play at least 5 days a week. Here's Royce Lewis. And he's a former top prospect in the system. And like I said, in AAA, there was nothing left for him to show as Lewis. Even though I know he was on a rehab assignment. He was tearing the cover off the baseball, and right now he can help fantasy owners. And like I said, the Twins need the offense, so he's a good pickup this week, surprisingly. Out there in 54% of leagues, that's a few hitters I look to add here already in a crucial week 11 of the fantasy baseball season.